My parents gave my room to my stepsister. She ripped down a wall and wound up, left paralyzed. Can you imagine someone being so consumed by jealousy that they'd risk everything to sabotage you? My stepsister did. She destroyed my childhood bedroom and, in a twisted, unbelievably tragic turn of events, ended up paralyzed. And honestly, I'm living my best life, and I'm not carrying the weight of her choices. Buckle up, because this story, it's wild from start to finish. And I mean literally wild. I'm 18, and this whole mess started 6 months ago when my dad remarried. His new wife, Rebecca, brought her 19-year-old daughter, Olivia, into our lives. And from day one, Olivia made it crystal clear she wasn't interested in being family. She was interested in taking what was mine. Before we dive into the absolute disaster that unfolded, you need some context. My mom died when I was 8 after a brutal 2-year battle with cancer. Those final months? They were hell. Watching her get weaker, seeing her lose her hair, hearing her struggle to breathe, it's burned into my memory. The only flicker of light was our bedroom project. Mom knew she was dying, and she desperately wanted to leave me with something tangible, something I could touch and feel her presence in. So, every weekend she had the energy. We'd decorate my bedroom together. We'd pick out butterfly decals from this tiny craft store she adored, spending hours, literally hours, choosing the perfect ones. Each butterfly meant something specific. The purple ones? Our beach trip when I was 6. Yellow for her favorite flowers. Pink just because we both loved pink. And the blue ones? Those were for the sky she'd stare at from her hospital bed. We placed each one so carefully. Mom, directing me from my bed, resting between waves of nausea. Me on a step stool, trying to get them perfectly straight. Butterflies mean transformation, she told me as we worked. They start as caterpillars and become something beautiful. That's what I want for you, sweetheart. No matter what happens, I want you to transform into something beautiful. She died 3 weeks after we finished. I was just 8 years old, standing at her funeral, then going home to stare at those butterflies on my wall every single night. That room became my sanctuary, my memory palace, the last place on earth where I could still feel her, really feel her presence. Dad grieved hard. For 2 years, he was barely functional. He'd go to work, come home, sit in his recliner, just staring at nothing. I taught myself to cook from YouTube videos. Figured out laundry by reading the washing machine manual. I even learned to forge his signature on school permission slips because he'd forget about field trips. I was basically raising myself. Then, 3 years ago, he met Rebecca at a work conference. She was recently divorced, full of energy, and, honestly, determined to bring life back into our home. At first, I was genuinely happy Dad found someone. He started smiling again, asking about my day. He even showed up to my school events. But Rebecca came with Olivia. And that's exactly where everything started going sideways. The day they moved in, I really tried to be welcoming. I helped carry boxes, showed Olivia around, even offered to take her to the good coffee shop downtown. She barely acknowledged me, though. Too busy filming everything for her social media. About 3 hours into their first day, Olivia wandered upstairs and, inevitably, found my bedroom. I was in the kitchen making sandwiches when I heard her voice drift down the stairs. Oh my God, this room is perfect. I went upstairs to find her standing right in my doorway, phone out, already filming. She turned to me with this smile. It didn't reach her eyes. Not even close. I want this room, she said. Can I have it? I actually laughed because I genuinely thought she was joking. That room had been mine since I was 6 years old. Every single inch held a memory. The corner where Mom and I did jigsaw puzzles during her good days. The window seat where she'd read to me at night. The closet where we'd hidden Dad's birthday presents. That's my room, I said, still smiling because surely she was kidding. The guest room is right next door. It's actually bigger and gets better light. Olivia's smile instantly faded. She walked into my room without permission, trailing her fingers along my bookshelf, picking up photos of Mom and me, examining them like they were items in a store. The guest room is boring, she said, setting down a precious photo of Mom and me at the beach without even a glance. This room has character. And look at this antique vanity desk. Then she did it. She sat down at Mom's vanity. The one piece of furniture that was undeniably, irreplaceably Mom's. This would be perfect for my makeup collection. My jaw actually dropped. The casual entitlement. The complete disregard for boundaries. The way she was touching Mom's things like they were public property. It was absolutely staggering. That was my mom's, I said, my voice tight. She used that vanity every morning. That's not going anywhere. Olivia just examined her reflection in the mirror, completely ignoring me. She pulled out her phone, took a selfie, then turned to me with that fake smile again. I know this is your room now, but I really think it would work better for me. The guest room has barely any closet space, and I have a lot of clothes. Plus, butterflies and pink are literally my favorite things. It's like this room was meant for me. It was meant for me and my mom, I replied, anger starting to bubble up inside me. We decorated it together before she died. Those butterflies? We placed every single one. That pink. We spent a whole day finding the exact right shade. This room stays exactly as it is. Olivia's face shifted then, from fake sweetness to something colder, calculating. She stood up from the vanity and walked past me, into the hallway. Daddy, she called down the stairs, her voice suddenly small, sad and sickly sweet. Can you come here for a second? Dad came up the stairs with Rebecca right behind him. Olivia immediately launched into her pitch, her voice dripping with performative sadness. I don't want to cause problems, but the guest room is really small and dark. This room has so much more space and natural light. And look, butterflies and pink are my absolute favorite things. It feels like fate, you know? She turned to Dad with wide, innocent eyes. I just thought maybe as a welcome gift to your new family, I could have this room? It would just make me feel like I really belong here. I looked at Dad, fully expecting him to shut this down immediately. My mom's room. My memories. The butterflies we'd placed together during the last good months of her life. Surely he understood what that space meant to me. Instead, Dad walked over and put his hand on my shoulder. His touch felt apologetic even before he spoke. Would you mind giving up your room for your new sister? She really wants it. And I was thinking, what if I gave you the garage instead? You could decorate it however you want. Bring Mom's stuff down there. Make it your own space. It's actually 3 times the size of your current room. I stared at him, trying to process what he was asking. Give up Mom's room. The butterflies. The memories. The last physical space where I could still feel her presence. But then I looked at the garage in my mind. It was huge. Probably 600 square feet of completely unused space, currently filled with Dad's old golf clubs and boxes of junk. Ground floor. Separated from the main house. Completely private. If I had to lose Mom's room, at least I could create something new. Something that was entirely mine. Dad nodded quickly, clearly relieved I wasn't fighting harder. Absolutely. I'll help with the structural stuff. Windows, electrical, anything you need, but the design is all yours. Rebecca beamed, like this was some beautiful family compromise, instead of me being manipulated into giving up my dead mother's room. Olivia tried to hide her smile, but couldn't quite manage it. Deal, I finally said, hugging Dad. Not because I was happy, but because I needed that physical connection, to remember he was still my dad, even when he was choosing his new wife's daughter over his own child's grief. Olivia actually giggled. This high-pitched, victorious sound that made my skin crawl. Thank you so much. I promise I'll take such good care of it. And you should probably remove all that baby pink stuff anyway. Time for both of us to grow up, right? I went to my room, my former room, and carefully removed every single butterfly decal. Each one felt like peeling away a piece of Mom. The purple beach butterflies, the yellow flower ones, the pink ones just because we loved pink, the blue sky ones. I placed them all in a shoebox, wrapped in tissue paper, like sacred relics from a different lifetime. Olivia, meanwhile, moved in immediately, treating the space like it had always been hers. She didn't ask about the butterflies or the pink paint or Mom's vanity. She just started rearranging furniture to fit her aesthetic. That summer became my renovation project. I threw myself into transforming that garage with an intensity that surprised even me. Every day after my shift at the coffee shop, I'd spend hours in that space, working until my hands were covered in paint and my muscles ached. First step? Clearing out 20 years of accumulated junk. Dad's golf clubs he hadn't touched since Mom died. Boxes of old tax documents that should have been shredded ages ago. Broken lawn equipment nobody bothered fixing. Christmas decorations from the 90s. I hauled it all to the dump or donation center, making trip after trip in Dad's truck. Once the space was empty, I could finally see its potential. The bones were good: concrete floor, exposed rafters, decent height, and 2 walls with street-facing exposure where I could add windows. I spent a week glued to YouTube videos about garage conversions, taking notes, making lists, pricing materials. My budget was tight, just $2,000 saved from a year of coffee shop wages. I had to get creative, shop sales, hunt for deals on Facebook Marketplace. But I was determined to make this work. I started with the floor. Concrete was just too cold, too industrial. So I bought clearance laminate flooring that looked like weathered wood. I watched installation videos until I could do it in my sleep. Then I spent 3 back-breaking days on my hands and knees, measuring, cutting, clicking pieces together. My back screamed by day 2, but seeing that floor finally come together was addictive. Next came paint. Dad actually helped me install proper drywall over the garage walls, his one real contribution to the project. Once that was up, I painted everything a soft gray. Not dark or depressing, but calm and modern. It took 3 coats to cover properly, and my arm was sore for a week. But it transformed the space. The built-in bookshelves were my biggest project. I designed them myself using free CAD software I found online, then bought lumber piece by piece as my paychecks came in. Dad's friend Gary, a retired carpenter, came over a few times to teach me proper measurement and cutting techniques. We built those shelves together over 2 weekends, Gary showing me how to use his table saw, how to make joints properly, how to sand and finish wood. "You've got good hands," Gary told me as we worked. "Patient. Careful. Those are the marks of a real craftsperson." Coming from a guy who'd built houses for 40 years, that compliment meant everything. I installed the shelves along one entire wall, floor to ceiling, custom measurements to use every inch. I painted them white to contrast with the gray walls, then added some discreet lighting strips behind them so the books would glow at night. The reading nook came next. I built a platform in one corner, about 2 feet off the ground, using the same wood from the bookshelves. I covered it with outdoor carpet samples I got for free from a flooring store that was updating their displays. Added a pile of floor cushions I found at a thrift store and recovered with fabric remnants. Then, I strung fairy lights along the rafters above it, creating this magical overhead canopy of warm light. For the desk area, I repurposed an old door I found at Habitat Restore, gorgeous solid wood with vintage hardware. I mounted it on 2 filing cabinets I bought for $10 each at a yard sale, painting them to match the room. That door became my desk, big enough to spread out homework and art projects, positioned to face the backyard. The window was Dad's gift. One double-paned window that let natural light pour in and gave me a view of the garden Mom had planted years ago. I'd sit at that desk watching hummingbirds visit the feeder, and it felt like she was still there, somehow. I even added a mini projector I'd saved up for $150 on sale, mounted on the ceiling beam above my bed, so I could watch movies on the opposite wall. I hung floating shelves around the room for plants, photos, little decorative things that made the space feel truly personal. The final touch, of course, was Mom's stuff. I carefully brought down her vanity and positioned it as a nightstand beside my bed. I hung all our favorite photos on a gallery wall. Beach trips, birthday parties, random Tuesday afternoons that had meant nothing then, but meant everything now. I placed her jewelry box on one of the floating shelves where I could see it from my reading nook. For months of work, every evening, every weekend, every spare moment poured into creating this space. My hands were calloused. My bank account was empty. But I had built something extraordinary. The first night I slept in the completed room, I cried. Not sad tears, but this overwhelming mixture of grief and pride. Mom wasn't there to see what I'd created, but somehow, I felt like I'd honored her memory better than I ever could have by staying in that pink room upstairs. By the time school started, my garage room was basically a studio apartment that would make professional designers jealous. My friends went absolutely nuts over it. The first time I had people over, my best friend Jamie walked in and literally stopped dead in her tracks. Are you kidding me right now? This is what you built by yourself. Word spread fast. People from school I barely knew were messaging me, asking if they could see the legendary garage bedroom everyone kept posting about. Every weekend became an open house situation. Friends bringing friends. Everyone taking photos, posting them online with captions about how this was their absolute dream room. The reading nook became our official hangout spot. We'd pile in there with snacks and music. Fairy lights glowing overhead, just existing in this space I'd created from nothing. Kids from the art program started asking if they could sketch the room for their portfolio projects. The photography class wanted to use it as a location for their year-end exhibition. I won't lie. I was proud. For the first time since Mom died, I created something that was entirely mine, something beautiful that made people happy. The compliments felt so validating after years of being the quiet kid nobody noticed. But every person who praised my room, every social media post tagging me in photos of the space, every "this is the coolest room I've ever seen" comment, they all fed Olivia's jealousy like gasoline on a fire. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten until I came home one afternoon and found her standing in my garage doorway, arms crossed, face twisted with pure anger. She'd let herself in, even though I'd asked her to text before coming to my space. "Having another party tonight?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Just Jamie coming over to study," I replied, setting down my backpack. "Of course," she sneered. "Everyone always wants to come to your perfect little studio. Nobody asks to hang out in my room anymore." She gestured around the space like it had personally offended her. "You've made me look bad in front of all our friends." "How did I make you look bad?" "I just decorated a room." "You showed off," she snapped. "You made sure everyone knew how talented and creative you are, how you could build something amazing, while I'm just stuck with a regular bedroom." That's when it hit me. We were playing completely different games. I'd built the garage room as a healing project, a way to process grief, and create something positive. Olivia? She saw it as a competition she'd already lost. The very next week, Olivia stormed into Dad and Rebecca's bedroom while I was downstairs doing homework. Her voice carried through the entire house, shrill and accusatory. "She has a whole studio apartment while I'm stuck in a regular bedroom. This isn't fair. I'm the new family member. I'm supposed to get special treatment to feel welcome." That's how blended families work. I heard Rebecca's immediate response, jumping to her daughter's defense. "She's right, honey. We talked about making Olivia feel included. Maybe we should let her have the garage after all the work is done. The pink room is perfectly nice for her." My stomach dropped. After 4 months of my own grueling work, after $2,000 of my own hard-earned money, after every single hour I'd poured into that space, they were considering giving it to Olivia? But Dad, for once, held firm. She spent her own money decorating that space. Worked on it every single day for months. The garage is hers now. "Olivia, you got exactly what you asked for. The pink butterfly room." Discussion over. I heard something crash upstairs, probably Olivia throwing something in a fit of rage, followed by hyperventilating sobs. Then her voice, shaky but absolutely determined. "Fine. Keep your stupid garage. I don't need it." For 2 weeks after that, there was peace. A tense, uncomfortable peace, but peace nonetheless. Then Olivia launched her own renovation campaign. She started spending every weekend at home improvement stores with Rebecca, returning with literal cartloads of expensive upgrades. Professional LED strip lights that cost $200 and synced to music. Custom shelving that needed professional installation. A built-in vanity that required a contractor to reconfigure her entire closet space. Dad's credit card took a beating. Every weekend brought new charges: $300 for smart lighting, $450 for the vanity installation, $200 for decorative wall panels, $175 for a custom mirror. The pink room became Olivia's obsession. Her project. Her statement that she could create something equally impressive. But the more she upgraded, the less satisfied she became. The LED lights were cool, sure, until she realized my fairy lights were more Instagram-friendly. The built-in vanity was impressive, until someone mentioned that mine was an actual antique with history. The smart lighting was high-tech, until people pointed out that manual fairy lights had more charm. She'd drag visitors upstairs to show off her renovations, practically forcing them to admire each detail. See the lighting system? It cost $200. And this vanity? Custom built. The mirror alone was $175. Then, those same people would inevitably ask, "Can we see the garage room everyone's been talking about?" And Olivia's face would go dark with rage. She'd make excuses. "Oh, she's probably studying. The garage is messy. It's not that special anyway." But the damage was done. Her expensive upgrades couldn't compete with something built by hand, with love and creativity. The breaking point came when her best friend, Caitlin, posted side-by-side photos on Instagram. Olivia's pink room next to my garage room, with a caption that read, "Both amazing, but there's something special about spaces you build yourself." Olivia lost it. She accused Caitlin of betraying her, blocked her on every social platform, and spent 3 days refusing to come out of her room. When she finally emerged, something had shifted. She wasn't just jealous anymore.
She was planning something.
I noticed her measuring the wall between her room and the guest room. I saw her Googling things on her phone when she thought nobody was watching. I caught her staring at that wall with this calculating expression that made my skin crawl. But I didn't say anything. I didn't think she'd actually do anything crazy. That was my first mistake. Then came the weekend that changed everything forever. My cousin Brett was graduating from State University, first person in our family to get a degree. His parents planned this whole celebration weekend 2 hours north. Big ceremony, dinner at a nice restaurant, the works. Everyone was expected to attend. The Friday before we were supposed to leave, Olivia suddenly started complaining about feeling sick. Woke up claiming headache, nausea, general malaise. Rebecca immediately went into overprotective mother mode, taking her temperature, bringing her tea, suggesting maybe she should stay home and rest. "You guys should still go," Olivia said weakly from her bed, face buried in pillows. "I don't want to ruin Brett's big day. I'll just stay here and sleep." Rebecca looked torn. Dad checked his watch impatiently. We needed to leave in an hour to make the ceremony on time. I stood in the doorway, watching Olivia's little performance. This nagging feeling in my gut told me something was off. She'd been measuring that wall all week, Googling construction terms on her phone, acting strange and secretive. "Maybe someone should stay with her," I suggested. "She seems pretty sick." "I'm fine," Olivia insisted quickly. "It's just a headache. I don't need a babysitter. Go celebrate Brett's graduation." Rebecca checked her temperature one more time. Perfectly normal, then reluctantly agreed. "Call me if you need anything, sweetheart. Anything at all." We left around 9:30 a.m. I watched Olivia through the living room window as we pulled away. She was standing there in her pajamas, waving goodbye, looking healthy as ever. The moment our car turned the corner, she disappeared from the window. And that's when her true plan began. According to what we pieced together later from security footage and neighbor testimony, Olivia waited exactly 5 minutes to make sure we weren't coming back. Then she went straight to Dad's tool shed in the backyard. She found the 16-pound sledgehammer Dad used for concrete demolition projects. This massive tool, designed for breaking through solid materials. She had been planning this for at least a week, probably longer. The Google searches on her phone told the whole story. How to remove wall between 2 rooms. DIY wall removal. Combining bedrooms to make suite. Can you knock down walls yourself? What happens if you remove support beam? And, most damning of all, will home insurance cover accidental structural damage? She'd convinced herself the insurance would cover any damage. And once the wall was down, Dad would have no choice but to give her the massive suite she deserved. Olivia dragged that sledgehammer upstairs and positioned herself in front of the wall between the pink bedroom and the guest room. She'd cleared furniture away, laid down drop cloths, just like she'd seen in renovation videos. What she didn't know or didn't care about was that wall was load-bearing, a structural component supporting the entire ceiling. Remove it without proper support, and everything above would simply collapse. At 10:15 a.m., Olivia swung that sledgehammer. 4 swings total, breaking through drywall and studs. The wall came down easily, crumbling into white powder and pink paint, exactly like she'd planned. For maybe 4 seconds, everything worked perfectly. Then physics took over. Without the wall providing support, the major ceiling joist began to shift. The weight of the roof, plus the second-floor flooring, plus all the furniture in the rooms above, suddenly had no support structure. The beam started to crack with sounds the neighbors later described as like lightning striking the house. Mrs. Patterson from next door was gardening when she heard it. "I thought a car had crashed into their house." Just this enormous cracking sound, then another, then this rumbling that made my windows rattle. Olivia looked up to see a 12-foot, 200-pound ceiling joist coming straight down at her. In that split second, she understood exactly what was about to happen. She tried to dive toward the doorway, tried to get clear, but she was standing directly under the collapse zone with a sledgehammer in her hands, completely off balance. The beam caught her at the base of her skull, driving her face first into the floor with tremendous force. The impact shattered her C4 vertebrae, severing her spinal cord. The sheer weight pinned her there, crushing vertebrae and cutting off nerve pathways. Olivia was conscious. She felt the impact, felt her body go numb from the neck down. Tried to move. Nothing. Tried to breathe deeply, and realized her lungs weren't responding. She screamed until her voice gave out, knowing nobody was home. She lay there for 4 agonizing hours before Mrs. Patterson heard faint sounds and finally called 911. Paramedics arrived, carefully removed the beam, and got her onto a backboard. By then, she'd been trapped for 4 hours and 8 minutes, far too long for any hope of recovery. We got the call at 2:47 p.m. during Brett's celebration dinner. Dad's phone rang with a local number he didn't recognize. "This is County Fire Department. There's been a serious accident at your residence. Your daughter has been transported to Regional Medical Center with critical injuries. You need to get there immediately." The 2-hour drive back was hell. Dad broke every speed limit. Rebecca sobbed uncontrollably in the passenger seat. I sat frozen in the back, replaying the morning. Olivia's fake sickness, her insistence that we leave, the strange behavior all week. She'd planned this. I knew it. This wasn't random. Olivia had destroyed that wall deliberately, and now everything had gone catastrophically wrong. We got to the hospital around 8 p.m. Olivia was already in emergency surgery. A nurse directed us to the surgical waiting area, where we sat under fluorescent lights that made everything feel even more surreal. A doctor finally came out around 9:30 p.m. His expression told us everything before he even spoke, that practice sympathy doctors develop after delivering bad news too many times. "Olivia survived the surgery," he said, his voice soft but firm. "But I need to be very clear about her prognosis. The cervical spine injury she sustained is complete at the C4 level. She will never have movement or sensation below her neck again. She'll require a ventilator to breathe, 24-hour care, and extensive medical support for the rest of her life." Rebecca made this sound, not quite a scream, more like all the air being forced from her lungs at once. Dad just sat there, his face completely blank, processing information his brain simply didn't want to accept. "She's 19 years old," the doctor continued quietly. "I know this is devastating news. We'll have social workers and specialists talk to you about care options and what to expect going forward, but I want you to understand the permanence of this injury. Olivia will never walk again, never use her hands again, never breathe on her own again." They let us see her once she was stable enough for visitors. The ICU room looked like something from a science fiction movie. Machines everywhere, tubes and wires connecting Olivia to equipment keeping her alive. A ventilator was breathing for her, making this rhythmic whooshing sound every few seconds that would become the soundtrack of our lives. Olivia's eyes were open, tracking movement. That was all she could move, her eyes. Everything else was completely paralyzed. After a few days, once Olivia could communicate through the ventilator using a speaking valve, she asked to see me specifically.
Just me alone.
I walked into that ICU room expecting maybe an apology, or at least some acknowledgement of what her actions had cost everyone. Instead, she managed to speak through the mechanical breathing, her voice thin and strained. You made me feel like I had to compete for space in my own house. Now I'll never paint my nails again, never try on clothes again, never use a phone again. I just wanted to fit in with the family. The victim mentality was so complete, so absolute, that I couldn't even process a response. She demolished a load-bearing wall out of pure, destructive jealousy, and somehow, this was my fault for having a nice room. Rebecca jumped in immediately, turning to Dad with tears streaming down her face. Why couldn't you have shared your room? Why didn't you offer to help paint her bedroom when you saw how badly she wanted something special? Dad actually nodded like this made sense. Maybe if we'd been more accommodating, this wouldn't have happened. I stood there, surrounded by machines keeping my stepsister alive, listening to my own family blame me for her choices. The room felt like it was shrinking, walls pressing in from all sides. She took a sledgehammer to a wall. I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. That was her choice, not mine. They didn't respond, just turned back to Olivia, whose eyes had filled with what I can only describe as mechanical tears. Her body couldn't even cry properly anymore. The hospital kept Olivia for 6 weeks while they stabilized her condition and set up her long-term care plan. During that time, contractors came to our house to assess the damage. The entire upstairs was deemed structurally unsafe. The ceiling had collapsed into both the pink room and the guest room, leaving a gaping hole filled with insulation and broken beams. The estimate for repairs? A staggering $85,000. Dad's insurance adjuster came out 3 times, taking measurements and photos, asking detailed questions about what happened. Each visit left Dad looking older, more defeated. The contractors cordoned off the upstairs with caution tape. Olivia needed somewhere accessible, with space for medical equipment. The only option, they informed me like it was a done deal, was my garage room. Dad and Rebecca explained Olivia would move into the garage, the only ground floor space large enough for a hospital bed, ventilator, wheelchair, and rotating nursing staff. What about my stuff? I asked, my voice flat. You can move to the guest room downstairs, Dad said. Once upstairs is repaired, pick any room you want. The guest room was tiny, barely enough space for a bed and a dresser. All my bookshelves, my reading nook, everything I'd built would be dismantled. The room I'd spent 4 months creating was being taken to house the very person whose jealousy had destroyed it all. I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream that this wasn't fair, that Olivia's choices shouldn't cost me my sanctuary. But looking at Dad's exhausted face and Rebecca's red, tear-filled eyes, I realized there was no winning. Fine, I said, the word a bitter taste in my mouth. I'll start packing. The day they brought Olivia home from the hospital, a medical van pulled up with a hydraulic lift to unload her specialized wheelchair. The garage had been completely transformed. My fairy lights? Replaced with medical equipment. My reading nook? Now occupied by oxygen tanks and supply carts. They'd kept my bookshelf and desk in one corner, but everything else was gone. Olivia was positioned in the center of the room in a hospital bed, ventilator beside her, monitors beeping constantly. She looked so small amidst all that equipment, her eyes darting around the space that used to be mine. Her eyes found me standing in the doorway. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then she blinked twice, the signal they'd taught her for yes or acknowledgement. That's when I got a call from an unknown number. This is Ethan from Davis Insurance Company. We've completed our investigation into the structural collapse at your residence. I need you to come to our office downtown to discuss our findings. Dad drove us both to the insurance office the next day. We sat across a desk from Ethan and another investigator while they laid out what they discovered. Turns out, insurance companies investigate everything suspicious. And a 19-year-old demolishing a load-bearing wall while home alone? That definitely qualified as suspicious. They'd pulled Olivia's search history from the week before the collapse. She'd Googled, how to remove wall between two rooms. Can you knock down walls yourself? What happens if you remove support beam? And, most damning of all, will insurance cover accidental home damage? Olivia hadn't just made a reckless mistake. She'd planned this, researched it, knew it was dangerous, but convinced herself the insurance would cover any problems. Due to the intentional nature of the demolition and the code violations involved, Ethan explained, reading from a document, we're denying the structural damage claim. However, we're providing an $18,000 stipend for adaptive equipment to help with Miss Olivia's care needs. Dad's face went white. $85,000 in repairs that we have to pay ourselves? That's correct. The damage was caused by intentional demolition without permits or professional guidance. That's specifically excluded from your policy coverage. Rebecca started crying quietly. Dad just stared at the papers in front of him like they were written in a foreign language. We drove home in complete silence. Dad went straight to his office and started making calls. Contractors, loan officers, anyone who might help him figure out how to finance $85,000 in repairs on top of Olivia's ongoing medical costs. The next few months were a blur of construction noise, nursing staff rotations, and careful navigation around Olivia's medical equipment every time I needed something from the garage. The small downstairs guest room became my new space, but it felt like living in a closet compared to what I'd built. I focused on school and college applications, spending as little time at home as possible. My friends still invited me out, but the vibe had changed. They all knew what had happened, and there was this careful avoidance of mentioning the garage or asking how things were at home. Then something unexpected happened. I started getting accepted to colleges. Good colleges. With scholarship offers that would cover most of my expenses. State University offered me a full ride for academics. Regional Tech offered me housing and tuition. Suddenly, I had options. Options that would get me out of that house and into a future I'd built purely on my own merits. The day I told Dad about the scholarship offers, he hugged me for the first time in months. You deserve this, he said quietly. After everything you've been through, you deserve something good. That same week, the contractors finished repairing the upstairs. The new ceiling was solid, properly supported, and passed all the required inspections. Dad framed the final inspection certificate and hung it in the hallway like some kind of trophy. But the financial reality? It was crushing. Between the $85,000 home equity loan for repairs, Olivia's ongoing medical costs, and the 24-hour nursing care, Dad and Rebecca were hemorrhaging money. Dad picked up extra shifts at work. Rebecca took a second job. Their conversations became entirely focused on bills, schedules, and how to stretch every dollar. I helped where I could. Picked up shifts at a local coffee shop, contributed to groceries, covered my own expenses. But I was also saving every single penny for college. For books. For the life I was planning beyond this house. 6 months after the collapse, our house had settled into a new normal. A normal nobody would have chosen, but everyone had to accept. Olivia lived in the garage with round-the-clock nursing care. The upstairs was repaired, but it felt hollow. Just empty rooms that constantly reminded us of what happened. Family dinners were quiet, efficient affairs with no real conversation. And me? I was counting down the days until college started. The week before I left for State University, I went into the garage one last time to get some books I'd left on my old shelf. Olivia was awake, watching me through her eye-tracking tablet. I walked over to her bed and said what I'd been holding back for months. I'm sorry you felt invisible in this family, but what happened was my fault. I told her, my voice steady. You made your own choices with that sledgehammer, and I can't take responsibility for them. I'll help out when I can, because you're family now. But I'm also building my own life. And I'm not going to feel guilty about that. Her eyes blinked twice. Yes, understanding. I hope you find peace with what happened, I continued, because I've already found mine. I grabbed my books, walked out of that garage, and didn't look back. Now I'm living in a dorm room I decorated exactly how I wanted. My roommate and I hung fairy lights across our ceiling, built a reading nook with pillows we found at a thrift store, and covered our walls with photos of people and places we love. It's not as big as the garage was, but it's mine. My friends from home still text me pictures of their rooms, asking for decorating advice. I still help them brainstorm layouts and color schemes. And every single time, I'm reminded that the space I create is valuable, not because it makes other people jealous, but because it makes me happy. Last week, Dad sent me a photo. They painted the upstairs bedrooms and were actually renting them out to college students to help cover Olivia's medical expenses. The extra income is helping them get back on their feet financially. Rebecca started working with a support group for parents of paralyzed children, and Dad joined a caregiver support network. They're adapting, slowly learning to live with the consequences of that day. And Olivia? According to Dad's updates, she's working with an adaptive technology specialist to learn graphic design using her eye-tracking computer. Turns out she's actually pretty talented when she channels that competitive energy into something productive, instead of destructive. Do I feel bad about what happened to her? Of course. Nobody deserves what she's going through, regardless of the choices they made. But do I take responsibility for it? Absolutely not. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this one. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had someone try to sabotage something you poured your heart into? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear what you think.